Thank you very much. And it was always it's pleasure to hear our colleagues from the UNFCCC. So thank you, Tugba. Thank you, Tugba, very much for this very insightful presentation. So now I will make some confusion. Since, yes. Tugba explained a bit deeper about the Paris Agreement and Convention and reporting, I would say, within the ETF. So now I will focus more on adaptation reporting in general. So all means, all tools that you prepare, reports that you prepare in order to provide information on the adaptation. There is a wide variety of the communication tools, and now we will go through the main features of all these tools and explain actually how this system of adaptation communication works. So for many countries, for all countries, the reporting on climate change started with 1994 with national communications. And more or less countries or EU participants are familiar with that. So developing countries submitting their fourth or fifth national communication by now, most of the countries, developing country 8. So now let's talk about this initial report and also some other reports for communicating adaptation. So what was the goal for provision of the information within the national communication? To provide information about how countries implementing the their convention, actually, all information asked by the convention, like national situation on GHG emissions, vulnerabilities on climate change, capacity needs, some actions within the mitigation, adaptation, etc. Also actions to implement the convention, how they are planning, how they are implementing mitigation and adaptation actions, how they are providing support or maybe receiving, and how they are dealing with all of that. And also the goal was to highlight some issues and problems, gaps, challenges that they're facing with implementing the adaptation. I'm talking now just about adaptation and constraints, especially for non-Annex 1 countries. With the time, requirements for the information, climate information by the convention are broadened, and consequently the communication instruments are developed with time and introduced new in order to provide additional information. So as the need for information grows over the time, also the number of and range of the instruments also grown with the time. So in general, now we have 5 instruments for communicating adaptation. As the first, as I said, it's national communications, chapter on vulnerability and adaptation process, then national adaptation plans, national and determined contribution or their adaptation component, adaptation communications, and the last one introduced last year, biannual transparency report and its adaptation section that we usually call adaptation BTR, even though it's like not separate report, it's within the BTR. Also, some countries develop and communicate their adaptation plan through the instruments that not associated with the UNFCCC system. And some of these and most significant are national plans and programs and strategies. and they are mostly same as NEPs by their structure, but they are not supposed to be submitted to UNFCCC. The reason is because it's prepared by not eligible countries, which are developing countries that are not obliged to submit it. So, but they have a need to prepare their national adaptation plans or strategies, and that's why they are preparing it to make the adaptation process more consistent and more clear. So basically, looking at these 5 or 6 instruments, their primary function is for some of them to communicate forward-looking information, meaning adaptation ambitions, like in NDC, priorities plans, for example, in NEP, or to provide backward-looking information, so what progress they have made in implementing progress towards the goals, results of your adaptation planning, planned actions, and strategies. So in broadly speaking, we can divide these instruments and on planning-oriented or reporting-oriented. And within the planning-oriented instrument, we see NDC, its adaptation component, NAPS, also equivalent National Adaptation Plan or Strategy, and adaptation communication. Also, on the other hand, within the reporting-oriented instruments, we have national communications, their adaptation part, BTRs, also adaptation part, and adaptation communication. You see here adaptation communications in both columns, but I will explain why is that like that. So here on this chart, you see actually at the top different stages of the national adaptation process, which is of cyclical nature. So you are always starting your planning process, your adaptation process with some planning or actually assessing the state, identifying vulnerability, risks, etc. So meaning assessing your initial situation. Then based on analysis of your national situation when it comes to climate impact, you set adaptation priorities and targets. You prepare and develop your plan or strategy. Then you are planning, you are distributing these your planned actions over the time, and also prioritizing your actions and measures in order to solve the most important issues when it comes to your adaptation process. And at the end, or maybe at the beginning, you monitor and evaluate results to inform your next cycle of adaptation planning. So you learn from the process, you collect information about your actions, about the efficiency and effectiveness of your adaptation process, and then out of that, collect information for your next planning cycle. So the situation will not be the same as in the previous cycle. That's actually the normal planning process in any sector, and here just adjusted to the adaptation process. So here you see that flow of information for the planning-oriented instruments or communication instruments in adaptation comes from first identification of the vulnerability profile of the countries, setting adaptation priorities, targets, and goals, and decide on adaptation efforts or prioritizing the adaptation actions and measures. So these are planning-oriented instruments, and then out of these planning-oriented instruments, you come to the implementation part, and then out of that information that you gain through the implementation, you report through reporting-oriented instruments, which are, as I said, BTRs, for instance. And what is the goal, final goal of all this communication is to inform global stocktake that Tugba already mentioned here, with the main goal to assess global situation, to provide information on global state of vulnerabilities, of implementation, of effectiveness, efficiency of the actions, and to make some conclusions for the further steps, and to provide advices for the next next steps in a national adaptation process, regional and national adaptation processes. So this distinction actually between planning-oriented and reporting-oriented function is not clear-cut, you know, and even though they are communicate and provide forward-looking information like in your plans and strategies, or provide backward-looking information like progress. I think that I'm going back. So it's not always clear-cut between these two categories of reports, plans or planning-oriented documents or communications, since, for example, when you are planning or when you are doing your next, preparing your next national adaptation plan, you and other countries for sure will consider failures and successes of the previous planning process. So you will include some backward information also to feed and to provide as a base for the next planning cycle in the NEP. So you will have a reason why you excluded or included certain new measures or new actions in your next adaptation cycle. So also these instruments are not used on the same way by all countries, and sometimes also national communications used to address vulnerability and identify potential adaptation options, as well to report on what has been implemented in previous period. And also adaptation communications are, primarily their goal to communicate by some countries on their plans, but also for reporting other purposes, like that's why it is in both columns, planning-oriented and reporting-oriented. So you can report your plans, and also you can report some results of your adaptation process. So within the system of communicating and reporting of adaptation to Paris Agreement, there are some instruments, and I listed here, submitted to the UNFCCC, as already mentioned, planning-oriented and reporting-oriented. And this graph here shows how they feed each other with information and in one cyclical way. So NDCs and NAPs, specifically NDCs, provide, or within the NDC, countries provide their highest adaptation goals. Within the NAPs, they are more comprehensive, detailed, and then you report through the national communication results, results of implementation of your adaptation targets within the NDCs, and also actions and measures planned within your NAPs. You report through national communication, adaptation communication, and BTR. And as I said, information out of that, information assessed within the reports are fed up again to your NDC as a starting point for next planning cycle. Also on the right side of this graph, you have UNFCCC-driven mechanisms and processes where also, as well as in the in-country instruments, within the cycles of implementation have a goal to gain new knowledge, good practice, and lessons learned but on the global level, and through the review mechanisms. But here I would stress that a technical review of national communications is performed just for Annex 1 national communications, meaning adaptation chapter. And also there is a global stocktake that considering it's only UNFCCC-driven mechanism that considering adaptation. So what are the components of this system? So I will start from the planning-oriented instruments, and one of the first is nationally determined contributions, or NDCs. As I said, they use, their role is to communicate countries' top-level ambition within adaptation. The countries are not obliged to include adaptation within their national NDCs, but it's highly recommended. And besides the goals and targets, countries also very often include information about their needs as well. So this is adaptation component is voluntary in the NDCs, and also some countries include some other information as a supplements that they are considering important for their adaptation process, for instance, national circumstances, vulnerability, etc. So in the all next iteration of the NDC, countries may choose to include information about their progress in achieving pledges made in their previous NDC. National adaptation plans used to communicate outputs of the country's NAP process. And NAP plan is actually a result of the planning process. And NAP is UNFCCC endorsed adaptation planning designed to assist, initially designed to assist least developed countries. And initially it has been called NAPA, or a National Adaptation Plan of Actions, with intention to provide actually urgent assessment of countries' situation and needs, and to provide urgent support for LDCs. But then it has been recommended and accepted by other developing countries as a tool to formulate, great tool that helps countries to formulate and implement their strategic plans on the medium and long term when it comes to the adaptation. So NEP is the result of that adaptation planning process. So NEP actually describes a national adaptation strategy and background concept or situation on which this concept or plan is based. So NEP has to be strongly aligned with the NDC, so you cannot have different goals in the NDC adaptation chapter and different in the NEPs, but for sure NEP is much more comprehensive and detailed than NDC, and as I said, NDC provides just top level adaptation goals. So about the equivalent national adaptation plans and strategies, as I already said, they have same role as NEPs, but they are not submitted to UNFCCC since they are prepared by countries not eligible for NEP process, as for instance developed countries. And that's the only difference between these two instruments. As I said, developed countries and some non-LDC developing countries are not eligible to, for the NEP process within the UNFCCC. National communications, that's the oldest one. So most of the countries or experts, national experts, are very familiar with this process, and that's the original and initial reporting instrument under the convention. And at the beginning, they were like designed to tool or means to capture all activities under convention, including mitigation and adaptation, of course. There are two sets of the guidelines for preparation of the national communications for non-Annex 1 and Annex 1 countries, but vulnerability and adaptation chapter is same for these two groups of the countries. So also the guidelines for these two groups of countries when it comes to the adaptation part are very similar or largely similar. And also within the national communications, Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries provide very similar communication information about their exposure, vulnerability, risks, adaptation plans, actions, and something about the implementing of these actions and plans. Also, non-Annex 1 countries all very often include in their national communication include information about some proposed adaptation actions, gaps, challenges, barriers, also about some needs when it comes to adaptation. Adaptation communication is more or less a new communication mean, which is established by Article 7 of the Paris Agreement with the purpose to make like a more prominent adaptation comparing to the mitigation, since you know in previous years much more attention was paid to the mitigation, planning and implementation. Also, the goal was to strengthen adaptation actions and support for developing countries, to provide input to global stocktake, since this is much more detailed information than all other like information provided within the national communications, and also to enhance learning and understanding of adaptation needs and actions. So this instrument is not obligatory and is recommended to adaptation communication can be submitted as a component or in conjunction with other communication or documents. So you can see here on the left side elements of the guidelines for development of the adaptation communication. So as I said, countries are not obliged to prepare or submit adaptation communications, and they are very flexible and country-driven. So countries can determine how to use these guidelines for development of the adaptation communications. And in general, these guidelines consist of 9 general level elements, and they are very similar with the guidelines provided now for the BTR. Initially, we actually put this document or report in reporting-oriented, but also it can be considered as a planning-oriented instrument, since considering also elements of the adaptation planning process. So also, as you can see, here they use the prefix may, which mean that countries can select which elements they want to include in their adaptation communication document. So countries by now submitted their adaptation communication as a component of their NDC, also as NAP or equivalent, also as a vulnerability and adaptation chapter of their national communication, and also as a standalone reporting-oriented document. And by now, 71 countries provided or submitted adaptation communication to the UNFCCC. Yeah.
All non-annex countries?
Sorry?
All those non-annex countries?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In total. This is in total.
I was thinking maybe mostly developed countries don't report adaptation. Maybe I was wrong. So. Yeah.
And finally, biannual transparency reports. It's seen as a reporting-oriented instrument, but there is a clear overlap between functions of the BTR and national communications and adaptation communications. And also there is an overlap between guidelines for other communication instruments, adaptation communication instruments. So countries that using both or more adaptation communication instruments should be aware of that and try to avoid duplicating information since for these instruments that overlap. Also, even though the adaptation guidelines or reporting adaptation within the BTR is voluntary, they include, comparing to the other reporting instruments, they include a very extensive guidelines on reporting of monitoring and evaluation of adaptation, which is the most detailed now within the MPGs. Also, they require information about national adaptation process. So how did you start your adaptation process? How did you set up your plans, your goals, etc.? So the BTR guidelines are asking much more information about entire adaptation process within your countries. Also, they require information about principles that you applied when prepared your adaptation planning or within your adaptation process as entire activity. So as said, the guidelines for adaptation are much more comprehensive than any other adaptation communication instrument. So in general, why it's BTR relevant to reporting on adaptation? So it's also a transparency-oriented report within the ETF, and it will be hopefully produced by countries every 2 years and submitted to UNFCCC, and it represents one of the key components of the Paris Agreement's transparency infrastructures, or ETF. So as Tugba already said, the role of the ETF is to track progress, to provide clarity, and to provide clear information about the progress in implementing mitigation and adaptation, of course, but also in providing information about support. So in this framework, within the ETF, actually the national one of the goals of the ETF is to enable transfer of information about different aspects of the climate change and activities that countries perform in coping with that. So within the framework, inventory report intends to transfer information about GHG emissions, but while BTR aims to transfer information about implementation of different aspects of the Paris Agreement, meaning mitigation, adaptation, and within adaptation, loss and damage, and support that countries provided or received. As you all know, the ETF came to the force into the force on 31st December last year. So ETF then replaced the previous framework, well known as the MRV, or Monitoring, Review and Verification. And at the same time, the BTR replaced biannual reports and biannual update reports for both Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 parties. So then BTR format will be used from 2024 and onwards. Not all aspects of the previous system will be replaced. As Tugba mentioned, national communication, and all you know, national communication will remain active alongside with the BTRs under the ETF, and then countries will have opportunity to submit their BTRs together with their national communications, which will happen in theory every 4 years. The fact, actually, the new reports are applicable to both Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 parties represents a significant change from the previous system. Since in the previous system, the guidelines for non-Annex 1 and Annex 1 countries were different, as well as information they submitted and provided to the UNFCCC. The main and key difference between ATF and MRV is that BTR now includes a section on adaptation and on loss and damage, which was not case in BURs. So that also means that in this new format, the adaptation can be communicated every 2 years. So as already said, within the ETF and adaptation reporting, this new system under the ETF is a significant step up from the present system. So because it includes introduction of 2 new instruments that provide flexibility in regards on how countries report on adaptation, and also significant enhancement of the reporting guidelines, since reporting guidelines of the BTR are the most complete comparing to all other guidelines on adaptation reporting that we have by now. Also, this new system within the ETF and with BTRs allows countries to report adaptation once in 2 years, and that's the significant increase comparing to the previous system when adaptation was communicated every 4 years. It is important to stress also that reporting adaptation within the BTR or as adaptation communication is still voluntary, so all is on countries to decide, and then, after we will talk about why it's important to report adaptation and why it's suggested to countries to report adaptation. In any case, since it's voluntary, countries, of course, can continue report adaptation under the previous system, so meaning under the national communications every 4 years. So something a bit about what reporting adaptation through BTR means, and why and how it's defined by guidelines, defined by COPs. So some decisions and some chapters actually provide some official purpose or base for establishment of the enhanced transparency framework, and it says that purpose of the framework for transparency of action is to provide clear understanding of climate change actions and adaptation actions under Article 7, including good practices, priorities, needs, and gaps to inform global stocktake. So that's the purpose of adaptation communication within the ETF. So in relation to adaptation, the ETF is intended to provide clear understanding of climate change actions, meaning adaptation actions, good practices, priorities, and also to inform global stocktake. So this actually leads to the conclusion that adaptation BTR have more or less very similar function to adaptation chapter of the national communication. And in other words, it should include information as well as it is provided through the adaptation communication. So to provide information about countries' vulnerability to climate change, how to adapting to this vulnerability, and any adaptation needs or gaps that countries may have. Also, the purpose additional purpose is provided by 18th Decision 18th CME-1, and suggests that intention of the communicating adaptation is to contribute to collective pool of good practices and the lessons learned facilitate recognition of adaptation efforts from developing countries, and contribute to collective understanding and the status of adaptation at the global and regional level. So with the adaptation communication, the countries at first provide necessary information for their adaptation process, but also that's the base for exchange of the good practice information, suggestions, effectiveness of adaptation, and its information for the global and the regional level. So this actually means that adaptation reporting through the BTR is more comprehensive than submitted by now, more complete and with significantly more details requested by the guidelines, and also enables sharing good practice knowledge and lessons, which is actually reinforced by the actual guidelines for the adaptation BTR. So maybe I can stop here and ask some of you involved in the reporting by now, especially involved in adaptation reporting, what is a goal of your adaptation reporting? So what your country would like to achieve through adaptation reporting? Any comment? Julian?
Okay, let me share my experience first. Yes, so I've been involved in the adaptation communication, and also I've been working on the adaptation chapter of national communication, also BTR as well. So I've been involved in the many adaptation reporting. And to be honest, you know, the public official from my government, they asked me to help them to write about adaptation reporting. And then their objective is to submit as requested.
Excellent. Why not?
Why
You know,
not?
yeah.
Because there is an international agreement about this type of reporting, and then we have to submit it as a responsible member of the international community. We have to report it. So I think the primary objective is objective of this reporting is to submit it on time.
Thank you.
But personally, I've been working on the various adaptation reporting, the report, and then I try to somehow differentiate the objective of each reporting personally. You know, if you are in a similar position, you probably can do that, because as she mentioned that each report probably we have to submit the same element of information, but there is a different angles of the information we are submitting. For example, for the NAP, it's more like a plan-oriented information we are submitting. But for the BTR or the national communication, we are submitting more like an implementation side of the information. So if we say that if the subtitle of the report says adaptation policy, but there are the different angles from the different adaptation reporting sites. So we can actually try to differentiate our own objective to approach to those people, I can say.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this information and for this view and way of thinking of adaptation reporting, which is excellent, I want to say. But when submitting your adaptation reports, whether they are planning oriented or reporting oriented, you have different. You may have different audience you have your national audience, you have your decision makers, you can inform them about your vulnerabilities, risks, you can raise awareness and support implementation of your actions by making them more aware of impacts of climate change within your country. And also for the other side, for international communication, of course, the primarily public for all these documents is UNFCCC, but also there are other countries wishing to learn from your adaptation process, to see your examples, your good cases, some interesting adaptation actions, etc. So they also keen to learn from you on your adaptation process, but also there are international donors, countries in the role of the international donors, scientific organizations also in country, but international, etc., etc. So any other comments on purpose or intention of submission or adaptation by different countries? So you see, I listed here 5 adaptation reporting instruments. So what is the optimal combination of reporting adaptation in your country? Do you have already some experiences? I believe that you have experiences with the preparation and submission of national communications and adaptation section within, or maybe also with development preparation of the national adaptation plans. And how do you manage all these reporting obligations, planning when it comes to the adaptation? Yes.
Personally, I would prefer everything to be in one document that's BTR, because
it will be like a one-stop where you get all the information about climate action for a country. But if we talk about adaptation communication and other different reporting requirements, that's often considered as an additional task and required preparation. So having a robust submission within a BTR framework, I think is more feasible. At least that's my observation.
Yeah, you always, countries need to consider their capacities and needs to provide certain information, and to think about ability to prepare all this and collect all this information, which is not always feasible, but also it's not necessary to prepare one document which is all in all, all information in one document. So you have to consider that when you are preparing and reporting your adaptation, so you can use different ways to submit one document with national communication and BTR in one, but then you can use, or you should use, MPGs when reporting adaptation section, etc., etc. So that is one way how to avoid duplication of documents, etc.
Yeah, because I've seen many times it's the same set of information, copied, pasted, and produced as different set of information, and sometimes they don't even copy properly, like there is some changes in value, and it causes confusion. So rather than that, I think it's good to have one robust. And for me, like whenever somebody asks about what are the things that has been done, so everything is here. If we can point to a single reference, that becomes much more easier as well. Everything is there. There is a link between, like, for example, adaptation and national circumstances on the first part of the BTR. So there is some linkage as well.
Of course, yes. Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you. It's very interesting presentation. So, from my experience, the timeline of reporting is important. For example, in our first BTR, we're just reporting about the 2021 and 2. So in that time frame, if you already have the NAP, approved NAP, you have to talk about your NAP implementation. So if it is not NAP is approved, it's still under development, you have to consider your NDC document. And if your NDC document is outlined the number of items or activities or plans already indicated in the NDC, I think in BTR section of the adaptation, you have to just see the progress. What is an NDC? What is your government is approved? Is there adaptation activities in NDC? So definitely this number of tools and communication reports and all these things are going to help the countries to develop or budget tagging and the local level implementation, how measures are taken in terms of adaptation and climate change, against the climate change. So that's, I think it is very important tools to improve our local planning and national planning. So that's going to feed back into our decision making. So I think all this reporting is very important, and at the end of the day, how we just doing the paradigm shift from this development-oriented strategy into more climate-smart, climate-resilient paradigm. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yes, BTR also within the adaptation section asks for results of adaptation, implementation of adaptation actions in NDC and also in national communications. There are two paragraphs asking information about that. But when you are mentioning the National Adaptation Plan, which is under developing, but in meantime you reported or submitted your BTR, so you should include simply information that you are planning, what you are doing with, you can describe your NAP adaptation process. So that is also information, and in next iteration of the BTR, you will submit information about what have you stated in as your plans and actions in your NAP. So that is one way of reporting on NAP. And also on any other section within the adaptation BTR. For instance, many countries have challenges with the monitoring and evaluation, since many of them did not establish the systems. Not just developing countries, but also developed countries. But difference between developing and developed countries is developed countries clearly state we don't have M&E for adaptation, but we have implemented this, and that, invested that much money in these actions, and we protected, for instance, this area from this impact. While developing countries somehow are, I don't know how to describe, but they, if they don't have M&E developed, they should clearly state, we don't have it, but we work on establishing one. These are the steps that we are doing now, so just clearly state the situation. It's not an issue. We all it's very clear that it's not easy to establish an M&E for adaptation process, since you have very different activities, so many indicators. For mitigation, you can have just one indicator. For adaptation, you can have 100 indicators, 100 actions, measures, different actions, measures, etc. So it's not easy to measure and track that process. But also establishment of the M&E system is the process. So if you are at the beginning, that's right, and you should report that. Please.
Thank you, Madam. I was thinking in the context of these mega frameworks and how they are implemented in local level. In 2008, I wrote one article in a newspaper, Hindustan Times, that why cities need their sustainable strategies, their resilience strategies and other adaptation plans, etc. Very detailed article. And that time, I was thinking in this direction that if they start doing it, then a kind of movement starts at local level and then it becomes a plan of the national government. And that will be like planning from below, so participatory planning. And that can help in improving the quality of data and reporting also. Because if the plans are coming from local level in a realistic way, the proper data collection on identifiable, verifiable indicators, and then it is converted in a larger plan, and then it goes to the UNFCCC for,
For national
so
level,
it
yeah.
can become really good
Yeah.
quality document for monitoring, for evaluation, for progress, and looking at all these dimensions. So I'm thinking that, do you have some idea like how, I mean, from your side, any guideline for that how these mega frameworks can be converted at local level, at local adaptation plans, etc., or it is to the governments to decide how they want to move on this?
Everything which is not obligatory, it's, not developed, not prepared. So if you wish to have adaptation plans at the local level, you need to regulate that by your laws, sub-laws, etc., etc. So I personally think that this is the way, that's the way. So because in my country the situation is like that. If you did not prescribe something specifically, nobody will take care of that. So the situation is like, for instance, there is a national adaptation plan and it's prepared like 3 years ago. And they are not aware what is going on about, what has been implemented. They have no idea who is doing what, etc., etc. Even though it says, plan as a plan, you have activities, projects, time frames, national bodies in charge for, etc. So, but nobody is like really taking care about that. And when it comes to the when planning cycles finishes, then they will sit and say, oh my God, we don't have this information. But that's not true, because activities are going on with or without international support. And we talked here about climate finance, especially in adaptation. And there are some good examples how to raise adaptation, climate finance for adaptation at the local level. Some of the issues there is that the local administration and public in general in developing countries are not aware of what's going on about adaptation. They see they have a droughts and floods, etc., and they are trying to cope, and there are some national institutes and institutions implementing some regular measures, etc. But that's not strategic approach. So the countries have a different approach. Some of them are bottom up, some are opposite. And it depends on the national situation, circumstances, etc. But in this particular case that I am talking, the local level, some municipalities prepare assess their state vulnerabilities at local level, then prepare the plan, and after that they developed specific financial tool. They call it like that. Actually, they assessed their finances and put them in the burning spots. And then with that plan, they were able to say, okay, we have these issues in our municipality, this and that, and we need that much money for that. So they actually find found some funds within their local budget, but also they were able to ask for additional funds from the national government, etc., for some neighborhood donors, neighborhood countries. So they raised their adaptation budget for several times.
Through loans also, like CDIA, ADB.
Different ways. So, you know, they were able to say, okay, this is going on, we need to solve this. For this, you know, they have all information necessary for loans, for donors, for national government, and also for local government to convince them, okay, this is the problem, this is our main industrial zone, it's affected, and we need to solve that in order to, you know, to ensure a sustainable development. So this is the way how it can be done from the bottom level. But as I said, it can be done both ways, also combination, depending on the country's situation. So any other comments on this?
If we have time, can I ask one more?
Of course.
And it's related with another presentation, previous presentation also, like, and many friends raised this issue of climate financing also. Do you have some cases where either the national governments have decided, keeping in view the scenario that not adequate funding through these carbon credits or other things are going to some of these countries for those initiatives? So do you have some cases where the governments have decided that, okay, let's do ourselves, and government decide, okay, all the ministries earmark 1% or 2% of their budget on green initiatives, on climate-related initiatives, or something like that. Do you have some idea like that? Or now it's time of tariffs, a lot of tariffs. So can we think of something out of these tariffs, because MNCs, big companies, real estate developers, everybody is earning a lot of money, creating a lot of environmental issues around. And can we also think of some share of these tariffs which goes to climate financing? Just ideas. Maybe there are more issues we'll discuss later, because I don't want to burden you with too much questions.
I see that climate finance is burning issue here, and yeah, we are aware of that. Please, Tugba, can you?
Thank you. So actually, there are a few examples.
You are not on mic.
So maybe where I am sitting is not the best place. Okay. So there are different approaches actually. First of all, I saw some countries are developing national, like overall framework strategies to identify their priorities with their national resources. And then for these identified priorities for action, they are going for mobilization of funds through different development banks or other donors, like it can be World Bank, it can be various partners, right? So that's one approach I saw. Another approach, yes, some countries are of course giving priority to adaptation, and they are first using their national funds to address some of these actions because it is very high priority for them and urgent. So yes, some countries are also of course doing it. And then I saw there are some countries who are developing some internal national tools to be able to generate some resources for adaptation action, for green investment. For example, when they are developing some regulations, they might bring in some tax to, I don't know, how that they identify, it's up to them. I saw, like, for example, if they develop a regulation they can bring in tax for some highly polluting industries, or they are putting together some carbon markets, national carbon market systems. They also then identify some shares to be channeled into investing in adaptation or again green development kind of areas as well. So those are the examples I came across, but I don't know if they were what you were asking.
I think that's the future.
Yeah.
Nobody will give you money. So
They will, but also, one more thing. Sorry, one more thing. We also did something, so actually it depends on your donors as well. So you have to strategize. First, bring your like stakeholders, and I really mean it. Have very keen and open discussions with them, because you can put a perfect regulation, but if it is not possible to implement, it doesn't mean, and it will bother you, it will bother them. So sit together and really develop something together. And then also when doing this, also see which donors you have. For example, we were an EU accessing country when I was working within my ministry, so we had access to EU funds. So we use, because it is not sometimes only these reports, right? Report preparation is something, enabling activities is something else. You have Civic GSP, you have World Bank, you have DEF, you have GCF. So just see, you have like Asian Development Bank, maybe many more. So just see what they are giving you on doing what. And prepare yourself an activity plan on how to put these pieces of puzzles into this big picture, right? So for example, there was a huge interest in my country from the local entities, as well as some local, like, how to call it in English, my brain just stopped now, I don't know, like, not the syndicates, but like, for example, some agricultural communities, or like there's associations. So they were really struggling with something. So we asked EU and the Commission for, I don't know, like 20 million euros or something. It was really something for that. And then we, with that money, we developed a grant program for these people, because otherwise it's impossible. And they really need it. So also see how you can design different approaches. And then we run some calls, so they all apply to be able to use from grants, some pieces of these grants. And then we did some rankings, because then you also see the diversity of the needs and how they are approaching and what are their solutions. And at the end, you can also use some of the best working solutions to further maybe duplicate or apply some other places.
I'm just wondering, was it that part of that kind of green initiative, or it was just...
It was just a project, just a project.
Because when it comes to green initiative, it will get some challenge over there, because not all the association or local communities know what is green.
Yes.
And how to implement, how to, I mean, I said...
Then you have to start with the green ones then. You start choosing from the green ones,
Because of the question in climate, it should be green.
European Commission has been providing a lot of funding to such initiatives like 3Rs or circular economy or
Yes,
energy
SDGs.
efficiency, etc.
Exactly.
So they have been providing.
Usually you have to start with your national standard. If you are just accepting or approving the national standards. Yes, green taxonomy, but also value chain, they should be green. So EU or, yes, if you already approved or accepting the international standards, EU standards, your starting point is good to go.
Like a project based actually.
Yeah.
That's possible to some extent.
So, for example, we have 6,000 standards, national standards. Only from 5%, 5 or 6% is EU or international standards. So that's the trade barriers. If you are implementing attracting the green finance, your starting point is how to greening your national standards. Yeah.
Currently, World Bank is supporting Kyrgyzstan with 120 million USD to support agricultural associations for green activities. But the issue is that when we approach those agricultural associations, even banking system, those guys doesn't know exactly what is mean green. And so now the role of Climate Finance Center is to help to both sides, to associations and as well as for climate financial institutions to assess, to check, to monitor, and then to be sure that that loan which they provide, cheap loan, is like 6%, which is almost a quarter of we have in real cases. So in that sense, it's not only available to fund, sometimes it's how to provide and then how to teach those who are getting those loans from a financial institution. That's also another capacity issue, I think, in developing countries.
Yes, I agree totally with you, because probably you have also experienced in your countries that it's much easier for financial institutions to provide some loans for mitigation activities. But for adaptation, they don't understand what's going on and they don't see money there. So you don't have some financial results out of the adaptation measures and actions. So you have to be very wise when preparing and and applying for some loans for adaptation measures. But also it's the matter of the knowledge and raising awareness for all society members, including financial institutions. They see just the profit. You have to show them what they want to see. Even in adaptation, you can show that. So, but you need to be well prepared for that. So, let's. I already said that. Yeah, we all know that UNFCCC and Paris Agreement are the main target audience, but in general, as we said, we have domestic stakeholders and international stakeholders with whom we can share and supposed to share the information we collect and prepare and report through our adaptation planning or reporting oriented instruments. For domestic stakeholders, I would stress that all levels of the government, local and national level ministries, institutions, etc., can be and should be your main audience in your country. Why? It's very important to communicate situation with them, to make them aware of the burning issues, of observed impacts, of future impacts, what are the main vulnerable areas, or what are potential measures and maybe losses and damage. When we talk about BTR and new guidelines, you also can provide this information. So if you wish to make some good acceptance and action from your local government, you have to communicate that with them. But also there are, when it comes to the domestic stakeholders, national NGOs, academia is very often included in all adaptation, assessment of the situation, meaning vulnerability assessment, risks, etc., and also provision of the suggestions about the measure, prioritization, cost-benefit analysis, etc. These people are very highly involved and should be involved rather than some external experts, which is common case in a developing country. Private sector as potential investors within your country, media and general public, to be aware what is going on in their country, why they have problems, who is doing what to solve these problems, etc. For international stakeholders, we already said UNFCCC and COP in their COP capacities, and also other countries as potential donors. We have, for certain in my region, there is a lots of neighborhood countries which are donors in developing countries, supporting many projects, especially now when they are accessing to the European Union. Also some other donors like GCF, ETF, international NGOs, and other international partners. So when targeting your reports and when you're tailoring reports for specific public, you have to be aware what information you would like to share and what is of the interest of different stakeholders, regardless whether they are included in planning or preparation of the certain documents. So if you wish to communicate certain information with the specific group of stakeholders, you have to be aware of that at the beginning of your planning process. So to consider which stakeholders will be your target, other target audience, is the information you providing relevant about the subject area that you are reporting or sector? So do you provide enough details or clarity about the topics to meet informational needs that your stakeholders have? So if a country wants to demonstrate prioritization and addressing of the needs of the vulnerable groups, women, minorities, etc., in their adaptation process, it should be clearly reported that what is government's ambition in that policy or area, and what has been done recently in that specific area. For instance, if we are talking about gender mainstreaming and consideration, how gender is mainstreamed in adaptation planning in this specific case. So also this could provide all actors of the adaptation process with a stronger starting point to develop and implement policies and actions and mainstream adaptation consideration in decision-making process, which is crucial for your national adaptation process. So what are the additional functions reporting on adaptation is, as we already said, contributing to collective pool of good knowledge and good practice, since your reports will be read by other countries as examples. Then one very important role is recognition of adaptation by developing countries, and also raising and furthering collective understanding of status of adaptation at global and regional levels. So countries wishing to use adaptation reporting to realize any of these possibilities would need to consider as they prepare their reports. So it's important to know at the beginning what you would like to report, or which information you would like to communicate, which good practices, lessons, etc., etc. So just be ready or be aware that information you are providing should be very clear, complete, detailed enough to be understandable to your targeted audience. So some few words about trade-offs between comprehensiveness and depth of the of your reports. As we stated at the beginning, the BTR with MPG's adaptation sector will be more, and they are more comprehensive than previous reports and previous sections of adaptation through national communications. And also with this intention also to facilitate sharing of lessons learned and good practice can be utilized to communicate with different stakeholders. So, however, your adaptation information cannot be all in one, and there are some trade-offs that needs to be used when preparing your reports. So, as I already said, when preparing your reports, adaptation reports, you have to balance between several, goals. The first one is what you would like to achieve with your reports, and also what is possible considering your capacities, your needs, your intentions to communicate, etc. So the communicating adaptation and other information within the climate reports through every available reporting instrument separately will pose or would pose a significant burden for each country, and there is no big payoff for that. So why should we do that? So it's recommended that countries use some tools in order to reduce this reporting burden by taking and considering some synergies between these reporting instruments. So in that context, countries can combine different reports like national communication and BTR, national communication, national adaptation, BTR adaptation communication, and also three together, national communication, BTR, and adaptation communication. And of course, for national communications and BTRs, they can be submitted every 4 years. This is something that I would like to show you, and it's prepared by a climate group of experts, and shows actually information requirements by guidelines for different reporting documents, BTR, adaptation communications, NAPs, national communications for non-Annex 1 parties and Annex 1 parties. And it's obvious that the BTR consists with MPGs requires the most comprehensive information. So this actually suggests that when you're preparing your adaptation report, your starting point for reporting can be MPGs, since they then will ensure you to provide information for all other, in accordance to all other documents. So I very much like this information, and also this can help you when you're preparing your adaptation part of the BTR, since, for instance, for those who did not yet submitted or prepared BTR, some countries are asking what information we should submit. We don't know what we want to communicate, etc. They are somehow, walking in the fog and asking. They are not sure how to report adaptation within BTR, even though they have clear MPGs. So their starting point can be adaptation, national communication, for instance. What do they have, what information they have from national communications, like national circumstances, impacts, risks, and vulnerabilities, etc. All this information can be starting point for reporting adaptation within the BTR, since they are also requested by BTR. So also cross-references is also one other way for making this reporting process easier for the countries. So they can cross-reference previously reported information, and this provision is applicable to adaptation. Also, the cross-referencing should be apply to the or consider previously provided and submitted UNFCCC, and also the good way of cross-referencing is using the hyperlinks, but it's very important to stress out that these linked documents needs to be on the same language as original report, and it needs to be, of course, online and publicly available. So for countries that are using this opportunity, should be aware of what level of details of information they will provide in the actual report, and what additional information the public or readers can find out through the hyperlinks. So be aware that not all readers of your documents will click on hyperlink to get additional information. So you have to make a certain balance when using this tool. So this is, I will stop here, and if you have some comments, I know it's the end of the day. It's the first day, we all arrived yesterday. So if you have any questions now, or we can discuss tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have a chance to hear some details about BTR and chapters within the BTR, some experiences, etc., etc. So our dear organizers will announce the second day. So thank you so much.